Perfect. So for those of you who are, joining us maybe for the first time, I wanted to introduce you to the Culture First community, who we are. We are a group of people who imagine a better world of work is possible. And we believe that to achieve this goal, we need to work together. We need the support of community. We need like-minded culture geeks such as yourselves to help us do get the work done. So we come together in gatherings such as these, whether they are online or in person or through our People Geek Slack channel, to ideate, to learn from each other, to share our own experiences and best practices on how to create a better, a more humane world of work. So if this is something that speaks to you and that resonates with you and you want to know how to get more involved, Mika will share the community page link with you in the chat and just explore the ways that you can get involved, whether it's through the resources we have, the Slack channel, as I mentioned, or the podcast. We have over 100+ global chapters, and some of them are represented here today. So as I mentioned earlier, I represent the Dubai chapter, and I'm the chapter lead here based in the UAE. We are also joined by the two amazing chapter leads from Abu Dhabi, Ahmed and Mika, who are on this group as well. And our wonderful speakers today also represent the Culture First community as well as our experts. But Natalia is based in Geneva and Sarah is based in Madison, Wisconsin, US. So reach out to them if you want to find out more about the communities, find the chapter that's more relevant to you. We have thematic chapters as well as geographical chapters. And we've recently launched the Global Trauma chapter. So, please go visit our community page, find out more about us, and find out what's upcoming, our events, our activities, and join the community. I would also like to share with you our community principles. These are our core principles that define who we are as a community, a microculture, so to speak. And these also guide our interactions, such as the gathering here today. So as I go over them, want to just listen and reflect on them and, affirm them with us and embody them in our interaction here today. So I'll start with the first, which is foster belonging and acceptance. We hope to create a safe space for everyone where diversity of opinions and perspectives is welcomed, where we leave judgment behind and approach differences of opinions and things we don't understand with curiosity and a willingness to learn. We are also willing to reflect and grow, taking a deeper look within ourselves to see what are the changes that need to be made, whether they are within ourselves, in our workplaces, or within our own leadership. Now, we understand that true growth comes from authentic sharing of ourselves and our experiences. So within this safe space, we ask you to explore your own deeper levels of vulnerability and share them with us, and thereby creating a space for others to do the same. So that we can take a deeper dive into the issues and the topics that we're going to cover rather than just a superficial handling of it. So we invite you to be more vulnerable and share your authentic experiences with us. At the end of it all, we want you to put your learning into action. We want you to take all that you learn here, the community support that you get here, the connections that you make, take it all back to your work and your workplaces and keep creating that better world of work that we all imagine together. Our last principle, connection inside and business outside, is another core purpose of our gatherings, which is it's not just another networking event. So we leave the business transactions and the titles all outside the door, and we hope to connect more as human beings in this, more at a relational human level. And of course, business opportunities are a possibility. We all come from related or similar fields, professional fields, but we hope that that good stuff can be kept for later and we connect as human beings in these gatherings. So with that, I want to introduce you to another signature activity that we have in Culture First, which is our Belonging Badges connection. So what are belonging badges? These are your labels that you might identify with. So some of our labels that we identify with are our physical attributes that people can see when they meet us. But others are more discreet, are more hidden. and actually are up to us, up to our discretion, whether we allow people to see these parts of us. So in this activity, we want you to embody one of our principles that I mentioned, having the courage to be vulnerable and share your belonging badges with us. So this is just a list that triggers your imagination on how you would like to be defined. This is by no means exhaustive. So if you feel you want to add a word to it or create your own badge, please feel free to do it. But what we'd like you to do is choose up to 3 badges in the chat with us and see which ones you identify with, and share them in the chat with us now. These are, of course, evolving badges. So when I was in my 20s, I would go for thrill seeker, and I think Natalia would vouch for that. I was a risk taker. I would, be up for anything. But now, as I've become a mommy, I'm more anxious and maybe more cautious. So I would go for that now. So thank you, Natalia. Mom, trauma survivor, former addict. I love it. And, please add, like Natalia has done, her own words to the list. Immigrant, optimist, creative. Excellent. Because we're always looking to expand the list as well. Anxious, privileged, spiritual. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, creative. Oh, perfect. So now, I see Laura saying I'm totally an extrovert. So what we'd like to do is take this a step further. And if there is one word that really is speaking to you right now, why don't you change your name in this meeting and identify yourself with one of the belonging badges. And the way you can change your name is if you go in the participant list, hover over your name, you'll get 3 dots on the side. If you click on them, you'll get the rename option. So if anybody is feeling, this is by no means compulsory, but if you feel like you want to change your name, please do that. Change your name for this meeting and tell us which belonging badge is defining you today, right now. Joy, thank you. Perfect. Excellent. I'm liking this. Guys, feel free to comment on the ones that we are receiving. If there's anyone that really, I hope everybody is noting down the new ones that we can add to the list. I like the yogi. I'm going to add that one definitely to the list because we have quite a few. Gemma, I see you. Thank you. Closet nerd, pet person, privilege. Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing. Ahmed, have you shared yours? I didn't see. Did you? I see your list.
Yeah, I shared mine. It's trauma survivor, optimist, and anxious.
I like your name change as well.
Yeah.
I'm not participating too much in this because if I mess up the tech part of this, then I'll lose the presentation. So I'm trying to stay as minimal as I can on the computer, but I'll just share mine verbally. I would say feminist, maybe mom, and then non-judgmental is one that I create for myself. So I think that if everybody has shared, I think we can move on. Guys, thank you so much. I just generally, I feel that we know each other a little bit more than when we started out. So this is the purpose of this activity, and the purpose of our gatherings is to connect at that human level, get to know each other a little bit more. So we really appreciate your vulnerability. Thank you for your sharing. And please feel free to keep going. I'll just move on to the next slide just so that we can keep the timing and the workshop rolling. So now I just want to make sure that you understand that this is a standalone session. It has nothing to do with the sessions that we've had previously on this topic. I just wanted to highlight these topics that we have covered just to show you what interest our community has shown in this topic and how now it's kind of widely accepted and understood that trauma awareness and being trauma informed has a profound and meaningful impact on any transformation journey, whether at an individual level or at the organization level. So the first session that we hosted in the Dubai chapter was on this individual look at how we navigate our inner landscape through the trauma-informed lens so that we can show up more fully in our outer landscape, especially in the workplace context. This has an impact on our productivity, our performance, and our interactions and relationships at work. The recent one that we have with the global chapter, where Sarah and Natalia looked into the trauma-informed approach at the organizational level and to see what it means to be practically a trauma-informed workplace culture. And in this session today, we're taking that conversation a bit forward. And we're looking at how this conversation can focus on companies' D&I programs and take these programs and see how you can explore efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organizations, and that can be enhanced through adopting a trauma-sensitive approach. Before I hand over to our brilliant speakers, I just wanted to briefly touch upon the acronym DEI and say a little bit about what these terms mean within the workplace context. Now, I say all this being very cognizant as a DEI practitioner myself, that these are very complex concepts, and I am well aware of the danger of oversimplifying their meaning and their requirements. But this exercise is just an attempt to give a contextual background to someone who's probably encountering this acronym for the first time. So it's going to be oversimplified, but just to give you an idea of what we're talking about within the workplace context. So I'll start with diversity. The globaldiversitypractice.com defines diversity as any dimension that can be used to identify yourself and to differentiate a group or an individual from another. So some of these dimensions are often mentioned in legal documents and legislation and non-discrimination clauses, and the more familiar ones are gender, sexuality, religion, ethnicity, physical ability, but others can also talk about our life experiences like our marital status, our socioeconomic background, or our mental wellness status. So any identity label that defines us and can be used to differentiate us from each other. I'd also like to mention here that one individual can identify with multiple identity categories concurrently. So for example, I'll take myself. I identify as a married Muslim woman of color who has had upper middle class upbringing and education. So as you see, your different identities can have experiences related both to being marginalized as well as privilege. So this is what we call intersectionality, something that we will be going into further within this session as well. So you'll have a chance to explore this more. What does achieving diversity within the workplace means then? It's basically to say that your workforce is representative of the society, the culture, the historical relevance of the place where your organization is situated or operates from. Now, why is the culture, social, historical background important? Is because diversity policies are aiming to remove or address discrimination and promote groups that are traditionally marginalized, underserved, or underrepresented within each society. And that would differ from society to society or place to place. So for example, in the UAE, we have the local population is in the minority. They're 11%, but only represented 4% within the workplace in the private sector. So we have policies, the government has put in policies, quota policies for private sector organizations to increase local Emirati hires. This is what we mean when we talk about achieving diversity, is to represent the population within the society in our workforce, but also to prevent discrimination based on these diversity criteria. Equity, or what is fair, is different from equality, as we're always saying. Within the workplace context, while equality would require us to treat everyone the same, equity is based on the acknowledgement that we all, either as individuals or as groups, have had different experiences and starting lines in life. Therefore, in order to ensure that everyone is able to fully participate and have equal access to opportunities at work, Equity programs and policies and strategies would include structures or processes that address the unique needs of employees and provide them the accommodations that they need to be able to create a level playing field within the work and be able to participate more fully. I usually use this diagram to give a very visual look at what equity means versus equality. And I think equity policies would include our parental leave policies, disability access and accommodation at the workplace, or offering even flexible hours to our employees. I'll move on to, inclusion. Now, when we usually in our DEI seminars, we say when we've defined equity and diversity, we say everything else is inclusion. So from your foosball tables to your bean bags, down to feeling a sense of belonging and being valued as individuals when we come to work, all falls under inclusion. But if I were to simplify it and put it in two kinds of things, I think I would say that the core values, a core set of values that a company commits to and shares with its members. So everybody is committing to a core set of values and committing to embodying them. And these could include psychological safety, accountability, trust, mutual respect, and the list goes on and on. That creates the organization's culture. And an inclusive culture is one that allows members of that organization coming from differing backgrounds, characteristics, beliefs, abilities to work together effectively and fulfill their potential. So it is often said that an inclusive culture is one in which each member feels seen, heard, valued, and respected. So I'll stop here. And I hope that this provided you with a general idea of what these terms mean, and it provides proves to be useful for our discussion going forward. But by all means, we'll allow others to contribute, and the speakers will be able to highlight these concepts even more. With that, I will introduce you now to our speakers who are going to be joining us. We are joined by Natalia Bayorova, an award-winning trauma-informed facilitator with a background in international law and sustainable development. Natalia is a certified mindfulness meditation and yoga teacher adhering to the trauma-informed approach. She has co-founded the Trauma and Neurodivergence Initiative and launched the Trauma Circle process on Inner MBA and other places for increased awareness and agency. Natalia considers trauma awareness to be a key to sustainable and regenerative transformation and is constantly seeking to keep this conversation active. She lives in Geneva with her daughter in Switzerland and is the Geneva chapter lead, as I mentioned before. And we are joined by Sarah as well. Sarah is one of Culture Amp's top 25 emerging culture creators in wellness for 2024. Sarah is a nervous system and resilience coach who is certified in TRE, which is tension and trauma releasing exercises, and is the founder of Reset Resiliency, a wellness consultancy on a mission to reduce suffering in the workplace. Through her work, Sarah helps people reclaim power and balance over their nervous system so that they can live less stressful and more peaceful lives. Having an intimate relationship to trauma, Sarah deeply understands the connection between the body's trauma response and adverse life effects, being easily triggered, hypervigilant, and experiencing chronic pain. Sarah places an emphasis on building safety with her clients while helping them gain self-agency and self-awareness. Both Sarah and Natalia are also leading the newly launched Culture First Global Trauma Chapter. Mika will share the link with you to find out more about what the chapter activities are, how to join it, and to stay informed. We are so grateful to the both of you for giving us your time and your experience and expertise. And I will now hand over to you both.
Amazing. Hannah, thank you so much for setting this up and teeing us up for this super important conversation today. I'm just going to dive right in and talk about my why. So for those of you who don't know me, you may not be able to tell from these photos, but I have an intimate relationship to trauma. And my trauma has significantly impacted all elements of my life, including my career. And at times, my workplace experiences exacerbated my trauma to the point of re-traumatization. I didn't have leaders who I felt psychologically safe with. And had I had leaders who embodied this type of leadership, that probably would have changed a lot for me. So in light of wanting to be the change that you see in the world, I set out on my mission to reduce suffering in the workplace by co-regulating, meaning connecting with people through their nervous systems. And my intention for you, the audience today, is to know that your employees have experienced trauma. We cannot separate that personal from professional, meaning dropping that emotional baggage at the door. Our trauma is carried with us everywhere we go, including the workplace. Now more than ever, we need to have high levels of emotional intelligence and empathy, especially with the infusion of AI. And lastly, it's essential for leaders to see and understand the signs of trauma within themselves and also within their employees.
Thank you, Sarah. I just want to take a moment to give space to what you just shared with us. And since it's my first time taking the floor, I just want to, I'm super, super happy to see so many friends here and colleagues and absolutely amazing professionals who are doing amazing work. With some of you, we met on Inner MBA. With others, we're connected through trauma awareness initiatives and of course, Culture Fest. It's, for me, it's a huge sign of, yeah, I would say quality of this network that they are placing. They're focusing on these issues, and they're actually, with the global trauma chapter, I see that it's getting more organized attention. And it's great to see so many people coming together to support this conversation. So thank you. Thank you to all of you. And for those of you who have heard my story, just bear with me. I'll try to be quick. For the benefit of those who haven't, I think it's important, as Sarah also did, to explain where we're coming from. And that kind of, I think, helps understand where we're trying to get with all this. So on my beautiful pictures, I try to kind of show my path in this topic. And I have been enjoying, as Hannah mentioned, a very highly successful career as a lawyer in international law and corporation until just a few years ago, when in the middle of what I thought was my dream job, my body just collapsed. And I was bedridden for quite a long time, and it took me even longer to recover. I lost a job, I had to move again, uproot our lives of me and my daughter. And that was the first ring from the postman. As they say, the postman rings twice. And later the same year, I almost lost any ability to move. And I thought I would never, ever walk again. And it was pretty scary. And at the root of both these physical accidents was trauma. And I didn't know anything about that. And around the same time, I embarked on a 2-year journey to certify as a mindfulness meditation teacher. That program is called MMTCP, with some of the biggest names in this field. And it's one of the most intensive programs. And halfway through the first year, I crash landed onto my inner landscape, realizing that the imprint of one of my childhood experiences nearly hijacked my entire life. And I went through very severe traumatization that I'm still recovering from. And to help myself, I studied trauma-sensitive mindfulness meditation and the neurophysiology of trauma, just to understand what was going on with me and why. And then I started applying what I learned in the mindfulness context to everyday life. How to regain my agency, navigating life with everything that came up for me. And that allowed me to start reclaiming my energy, my voice, and my life from the grip of post-traumatic conditioning. And with Matt, who is here, and I'm so happy to see you, we started on Inner MBA, this trauma sensitivity space. And Inner MBA is essentially Master of Business Administration program. So it's for people who want to do their own thing in a way that aligns with their values. And so we started that process with fellow students to see how trauma can interfere on our journey, any journey from point A to B, be it professional or educational setting or transformational healing. And then I decided to make the same process available to the general public on Meetup, and I got an award from them for doing that work. And for me, I essentially see trauma-informed approach as part of sustainability and regeneration agenda as a key to achieving sustainable development goals and inner development goals especially. And without first giving space to what is, and that includes the post-traumatic conditioning and the accumulation of imprints of human experiences on our bodies and nervous systems, I don't think we can get where we want to be. And now I help people build parachutes so they can get a better sense of what's going on in the landscape without actually being overwhelmed. And I raise awareness about this topic, like this webinar, and I push for the trauma-informed agenda to advance systems change. Yeah, so that's me. Thank you for your attention.
Natalia, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's beautiful and really inspiring. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience that are resonating with what you're saying. So thank you. Okay, well, there's no real easy way to transition from that, but we do want to launch a poll just to get a pulse of how people are thinking about the link between trauma and DEI. So Hannah, do you mind launching the poll? Great. So our question is there a link between trauma awareness and DE&I? Obviously, the first answer here is I have a fair idea how the two are linked. The second is I imagine the two are linked, but I want to find out more. Third is what link? That would be a stretch. And fourth is no idea what any of this means. So we'll give about 30 seconds or so for people to respond, and then we'll go ahead and share those answers. Hannah, how are we looking on responses?
So I'll have to end the poll now. I hope everybody has been able to participate.
Okay. Look at that, Natalia. We're split. Awesome.
Yeah, that's actually beyond my wildest, most immodest expectations for the audience. I'm really honored to have the audience with quite a high level of awareness about this topic. So I'm really, really excited because it's going to be quite interactive. But before we dive into this topic, I have kids playing in the background. So if you hear some background noise, I hope not. We would like first to do a little bit of, to set the ground so we have a better chance to actually see how this all resonates with us and a better chance to navigate it in a more mindful way. And so before we dive into the thick, we would like first to acknowledge that any conversation about trauma can be taxing, and for your body, for your nervous system, your inner resources. And it's our intention to hold the space and this conversation by acknowledging the way it resonates on all of us while we advance through this webinar together. And we will be, as you will see, we'll be introducing certain elements that help us to facilitate navigating our conversation in a more trauma-sensitive way. so we can give you also a lived experience of this approach as well. And to hold this space together and make the trauma-informed container work, we will really try to need to try to establish a two-way communication in this space. And we will also be including some elements during our journey together that will help us do that as we go.
Thanks, Natalia. So first and foremost, let's engage in the ways that work for you and your body. So if you need to switch your camera on and off, turn your audio on and off, get up and stretch, maybe you want to go for a walk and listen, maybe you're cold and you need a pair of socks or a blanket or a sweater. Maybe you're thirsty, get yourself a glass of water. Or maybe my personal favorite is doodling and coloring while I'm on meetings. It helps me to learn while I'm listening. So please feel free to do so. And as Hannah had mentioned earlier, if you want to share something sensitive and you don't want it to be recorded, please let us know. We'll pause the recording. We would love for you to share, and then we'll resume so that we can capture the rest of the content. Lastly, if you're feeling that this webinar is getting just to be a little bit too much for you, you are totally empowered to leave. We are welcoming that and we're encouraging you to do that. The recording will be available, so please take care of yourself first and foremost.
And one image that could be helpful, maybe you've heard about it, maybe you haven't, but we just wanted that to offer that to you, is a cup. So you can imagine that representing actually your capacity. And so you can imagine a cup in your hands that is kind of between you and us and everything else that is offered to your attention as part of this webinar. And every time you could see if your cup is getting full, if it's already full, or there is some capacity that it remains to take something in. And that could help you kind of keep your hand on the pulse as we progress through the content.
So lastly on this slide, if you have any feedback on the webinar, anything that we discussed today or anything that resonates with you, whenever and whichever form it's available to you, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to hear what you have to say, and we'll be sharing our contact information, our offerings, and our spaces that we hold at the end.
And to help us kind of get into the space, more engaging space for what's to follow, we would like to invite you to do together what I like to call non-practice survival practice. And it's going to take 3 to 4 minutes, or maybe less even. But if you need to linger a little bit longer when we wrap up with that practice, please feel free to do so, just to get a sense if you need a bit more time.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to start by checking our environment and our body to make sure that everything is supporting you and your intention for this space. So firstly, let's check the positioning of the body. I'm standing right now, so I'm going to ground myself standing, but I'm sure the majority of you are sitting. So that would look like feet flat on the ground, your hips, shoulders, and your head are all aligned. You're not leaning too far forward or back, or just being too rigid. Legs not crossed, hands resting on your lap. And then once we kind of align our body, we're going to check the environment. So again, like I said, making sure that the body's not feeling cold. There's not a draft coming through the window. There's no thirst or bright light in your face. And that maybe your back, if it needs a cushion, that's there for you. So now we would love to invite you to either close your eyes, or if you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. Just a slight lowered gaze so that you're not giving too much attention to what you're looking at. And whatever best supports your need for this practice.
And then our invitation is to simply try to get a sense of what's coming up and what's already here. Try to sense, feel, or see how just that invitation to check in, to do this arrival practice, lands on your inner landscape. What's coming up? What is present? Maybe there is some resistance or tiredness or curiosity. Maybe some combination of emotions that you might not be able to name. Just something moving. Maybe there are some thoughts or doubts or numbness. Just seeing what's arising without interfering with it. Allowing your experience to be just as it is. And if there is not that much to observe, see if you can observe that too. Gently noticing what you may need before we gradually move towards wrapping up this long practice. Taking the time you need before you re-engage with the world around you. See if you are ready to open your eyes, if you have them closed. Maybe sensing if your body needs some gentle movement or stretching. And we're just going to take a minute or even less to allow ourselves for a buffer before we move to the next thing on our agenda. Just to take some space to see how that non-arrival practice resonated for you. Maybe to ask yourself, how am I feeling now? Where am I in my process, in my experience? How did that practice settle with me? What might I need before we proceed to the next item?
Thank you, Natalia. So just in honor of being vulnerable, I was feeling some anxiety. I felt some here in my chest and kind of lower here. So I love to shake. You'll learn about that later. So if you want to join me in some movement, stand up or sitting, let's shake it off. Just get the blood moving through our body a bit more. We're just going to cleanse ourselves of the residue experience that we just experienced by giving ourselves a little shake. Okay. I don't know about you, but I feel better.
And we just did the non-arrival. And thank you, Sarah, for this kind of shaking us out of that. And after we took the moment even to see where we are. And now we would like you to sit back and relax and enjoy one of the best videos we found out there on the foundations of neurophysiology of trauma through the lenses of polyvagal theory.
This is produced by Polyvagal Institute. It's one of my favorite resources. And like Natalia said, it's one of the best videos we've seen that explains this in a condensed version. We are going to send out the video at the end. It is 9 minutes. We're not going to watch all of it right now. We're just going to watch the intro for a few minutes. So when you have time on your own, please watch it. And we're going to play those most relevant parts during this time. Feel free to get up, get a glass of water, refill your coffee, tea, whatever, and enjoy this insightful video.
Over half of us have a chronic disorder such as high blood pressure or autoimmune disease. Rates of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addiction are skyrocketing. Why? The roots of these issues and more can often be traced to trauma, adverse childhood experiences, chronic stress, and ultimately, nervous system dysregulation. Meet your autonomic nervous system. Let's call it ANS. ANS takes care of a lot of your automatic functions, like your heartbeat, digestion, and body temperature. ANS also manages your survival and stress response, working to keep you alive when your life is in danger. ANS functions as our built-in detection system, constantly scanning our environment for cues of safety and cues of danger. As ANS scans the environment, it has 3 general responses or states. Safe. You feel calm, relaxed, and connected to those around you. Mobilized. When ANS detects danger, it sends a command and your heart rate and breathing increase, adrenaline and cortisol are released, and blood rushes to your muscles so you can handle the threat. This is our fight-flight response. Immobilized. When ANS detects that the danger is so great that you can't fight or run, it shuts you down. In this state, our heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature decrease, and pain-numbing endorphins are released. ANS does all of this automatically without us thinking about it. ANS doesn't just use these states for survival, it uses them to navigate through the world each day. When ANS functions well, it moves fluidly from one state to another, 1 minute mobilized and ready for action, and the next resting and recovering. ANS will often blend states together. When we play, ANS combines the mobilized and safe states, and when we are intimate with loved ones, it combines immobilized and safe states. When ANS can stay flexible and fluid like this, it helps us manage and become resilient to stress and negative events. We're able to bounce back and move on. Unfortunately, when we experience trauma and chronic stress, it can keep ANS from functioning in a healthy, regulated, and resilient way, and can keep us stuck in states of survival. A friendly get-together can become frightening. A simple meeting at work can become threatening. For those with a history of trauma and chronic stress, the ANS detection system often becomes faulty, constantly signaling danger even when we are safe. It's like ANS is an alarm system, constantly signaling fire even when there's no smoke and no flames. Consistently living in these survival states can be debilitating, and we often develop adaptive strategies like using drugs, alcohol, food, work, or sex in an attempt to bring regulation and temporary relief. Understanding how trauma impacts us is critically important. There is a whole spectrum of experiences that can be traumatizing and adversely impact ANS, like accidents, assaults, and natural disasters, which are often called shock traumas. There is also developmental or relational trauma, when we experience chronic adversity, abuse, neglect, and lack of safety while growing up. Many other experiences can be traumatizing, including chronic stress, medical procedures, and adverse community environments, like poverty, discrimination, and violence. Additionally, new research in epigenetics shows us that trauma can get passed down genetically at least 3 generations. In the past, we've thought about trauma as events that happen to us. We now know that trauma is an experience, not an event. It's what happens inside of us as a result of what happens to us. It's our response to the event rather than the event itself. Over 20 years.
Thanks for playing that, Hannah. I love that video. Please watch that, like I said. So let's talk about it. What is trauma? Well, in the past, a lot of us thought it was the event. It's actually how that event imprints on our minds and our bodies. So here we've put together, for the sake of the webinar, a definition. So trauma is not the event, but rather the physical, psychological, or emotional response to an event, a series of events or circumstances that are threatening, distressing, or harmful. And so continuing on this, what's important to know is that what's traumatic for one person may not be traumatic for another. So meaning that same event for one person might not have the same imprint for another person.
Yeah, so they say you never know what's going on, right, on the other side. And another thing is that we might not remember what happened or interpret it differently. But our bodies remember. And even that could be compromised. So the body keeps the score, but even to get there, we need the ability to get there. And very often, because of dissociation, those communication channels are not really working or fully working.
And so it's through these experiences which our body will filter everything. It's the lens in which we look through life. Our past experiences are brought with us in the present moment, and those experiences shape and color our world.
And another curious thing is that we don't need to experience a really dramatic effect to have a trauma-like imprint, which could be life-altering. A look in the moment can be enough. A word or the absence of a look or the word that were needed in that very moment.
So continuing on this trauma train here with this slide, many of us have probably heard of big T and little t trauma, with big T meaning life-threatening, things like war, abuse, natural disaster, and little t trauma meaning like non-life-threatening things that are things like divorce, bullying, or financial troubles. Well, Natalia and I are kind of challenging that because trauma is not so cut and dry. Some practitioners use these categories as ways to understand and wrap our heads around the complex phenomenon, which is trauma. But again, it's not as cut and dry.
And while for some this distinction could be helpful in understanding, it could also be misleading in a way that a certain experience or exposure might not fall squarely within any of these categories, yet have a life-altering effect.
Like, for example, we've listed emotional abuse on the right column, but I would never categorize my emotional abuse as a little t trauma because it had such a big imprint on me. It's also important to know that the body cannot tell the difference between emotional and physical trauma or abuse. It lights up the exact same parts of the brain. Abuse is abuse.
And if we apply this distinction in an overly formalistic manner, that could invite sense of shame or even self-judgment for those who survived those experiences.
So, as you may have begun to sense, trauma comes in all shapes and sizes. When we think of trauma, we tend to normally think about childhood trauma, but there are so many different categories of trauma. Some trauma categories you might not be as familiar with or even have on your radar would be secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, religious trauma, or medical trauma.
And you may ask, this is all making sense, but what all this has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion? And we're finally getting there. And thank you for bearing with us. And on the right column, you actually see another categorization that we thought could be useful for our discussion today. And that's kind of trying to divide into types of trauma, into categories of trauma. And there we offer individual, historical, collective, intergenerational, and my personal favorite, systemic, which is the type of trauma that takes us directly to the subject matter of our discussion today. And before we go into systemic trauma per se, let's first see where all this comes from. And the term systemic comes from the system. And the systems in this particular context, the systems of power and oppression that exist in society.
So let's define what oppression is. Oppression refers to a combination of prejudice and institutional power that creates a system that regularly and severely discriminates against some groups and benefits other groups.
And if that's okay, we would like to gently take you to a more interactive part of our webinar and ask you, our distinguished audience, to name the systems or the criteria in whichever way that resonates for you, that you know in society maybe you experience that, or you just know it exists. So anything that comes to your mind, any system that you know, or any basis for that system of power and oppression, you can also share that. And we would like to invite you to do that in the chat if that's okay with you.
Yeah, okay, we've got some coming in. Women's medical care. Oh, now they're going fast and I can't read them all. Lad culture displayed by all genders and offices. Ick. Hashtag ick. Amazing. Office temperature. Hyperindependence. Ageism. Patriarchy. Yep. LGBTQ trauma. Yes.
Great.
Yes. Introvert doormat. Great. Yes. Hannah. Next slide, please.
I think we're ready for it.
Yeah. So as some of you have guessed, these are the criteria or the systems of power and oppression. Of course, this list is not exhaustive. So moving from that, let's talk a little bit about intersectionality. So we, the audience, we're probably familiar with this concept of intersectionality. Hannah, you talked about it a little bit before. This idea that we all have multiple identities. The concept of intersectionality was introduced into the field of legal studies by the Black feminist scholar Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, and refers to the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, weight, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group regarded as creating overlapping or interdependent systems of discrimination and privilege.
And we would like to share with you, with my legal background, I'm aware of my legalese language, but I really wanted to share that case with you where it all started. In 1976, a group of 5 Black women who worked at General Motors, they brought a case against the employer about the compound employment discrimination against Black women, and as a result of the layoff system that was based on seniority. And the courts, they weighed the allegations of race and gender discrimination separately, finding that the employment of African American male factory workers disproved racial discrimination, and the employment of white female office workers disproved gender discrimination. And the court declined to consider compound discrimination and dismissed the case. So in that case, Crenshaw, who came up with this term, argued that in such cases, the courts have tended to ignore Black women's unique experiences by treating them as only women or only Black.
So, systemic trauma, what is it? It's trauma, wrapping this all up, resulting from the systemic and maintained practices and procedures that cause direct or indirect harm to communities or specific groups of people in physical, psychological, emotional, economical, educational, and other ways.
And as you can imagine, systemic and maintained discrimination creates conditioning. It creates behavioral patterns. It creates its own triggers and reactions, imprints and wirings, and all they interact in a landscape at any given moment in time, often reinforcing one another.
Mm-hmm. So where are we going with this? Well, it takes 2 to tango. Both sides of the equation, those in the oppressed and those in the empowered position, suffer in their own way from the conditioning stemming from such systems. Therefore, to impact the conditioning stemming from systems of power and oppression, we need both sides.
And we wanted to share with you a story, a very beautiful story, and we will have some music in the background, because I heard this, you would never guess, at Verbier Festival, which is one of the leading festivals of classical music in the world. And they have this format there where over breakfast, it's called Café Croissant, you can meet the headliners of the festival, so world-class talent of classical music, and hear their truths, meet them in person, ask them questions. And so I heard from Golda Schultz, who is one of the best sopranos in the world. She comes from South Africa, and she shared her experience of navigating the world of classical music, which is one of the least diverse professional environments, as a BIPOC woman, and how she finds herself singing female leads that are narrated by men and directed by men too. And so what she shared, and I thought in that moment, oh my God, I need to share this with diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals in my network. So she said, like, every time I hear something from the male director that falls flat, or is a bit one-dimensional, or just biased, instead of judging, reacting, putting her finger on it, or criticizing, she said, I use just one phrase, my go-to phrase in such situations: say more. And she said, we, referring to, you know, the people who are on the oppression side of that equation, of the system of power and oppression, she said, we also have the role to unpack the conditioning. We can help those who are in the empowered side to see their bias. And for me, it was such a beautiful example of calling out versus calling in. These concepts are so hard to explain. And so we really wanted to share this story with you and the video, so you can see her presence on stage as well. And some of our colleagues, they even noticed her hairstyle as well on stage. And as this for me, it was such a real life wisdom that helps you navigate such environments. Thank you so much for enjoying with us this wonderful piece of music. And here we took this image from, maybe you've seen that, the series The Umbrella Academy. And it's the episode that is called World's Biggest Ball of Twine. And we like this image because it's a really good representation of how we are all entangled in our own balls of twine, where the imprints of past experiences are intertwined, and very often they reinforce one another. And this, of course, includes the conditioning attached to different identities we all have. Mm-hmm. And now we proceed to the most active part. So we would like to flex our muscles before we open the floor for our collective exercise. And we wanted to do this in an interactive way, because we truly believe that when it comes to trauma, every single person can be a teacher, because every single person knows how it feels. And we would like to offer a little bit of a warm-up. So we arrived to the final exercise with our brilliant case study provided by Hannah today in the best shape possible. And for that, we would like to share with you, we didn't want to, initially to lecture you or give you some checklist, because very often it's about the lived experience. And we would like, as a way of warm up, to share 2 real life situations, showing how a compliant way to deal with things. So the way that everyone plays by the book can still go horribly wrong for the lack of trauma sensitivity and have all sorts of repercussions on those involved. So, Sarah, if you could share your example with us.
Thanks, Natalia. So it was, I was actually working at a tech startup when the George Floyd situation happened. And at the time we had, I think, like one Black employee, with the majority of the staff being white. And we were all waiting for leadership to say something about what happened. And eventually they did, but it wasn't what we were thinking. Instead, they said something very neutral and did not create any safety for that employee, for us to feel supported. And so, of course, the easy thing to have done was to say in Slack that, of course, Black Lives Matter, of course, our Black employees is important to us and integral to our culture and moving the company forward. But that was not said. And to no surprise, that employee left shortly after the Slack occurrence.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your experience. And we'll go back to this example when we discuss a little bit in a more detailed what employees, employers, managers, they could do in this situation. And the story that I wanted to share with you, Sarah's experience is so beautifully fits into the subject of this discussion because it is about systemic trauma. And mine is a little bit more general about the nervous system navigating the world of work. And I heard it from no other than the CEO of Culture M. Didier shared it on a podcast that is facilitated by World Economic Forum, Meet the Leader. And he spoke, and at the time there were massive layoffs going on in the tech industry, high-tech industry. And he spoke about giving space and the time for the employees and the employers to process that experience like grieving. Because some people stay, some people go. And that idea had the purpose to prevent the corporate culture from being damaged by that experience and to keep employees engaged. So their engagement not be affected too much, like it always happens in real life after massive layoffs. And so in both situations, we have technically compliant behavior, and yet very devastating, actually, consequences, depending on the way you process it, you behave in that situation.
Thanks for sharing, Natalia. So, what does it mean to be trauma-informed? It means understanding the widespread impact of trauma on individuals, communities, and society as a whole, recognizing the signs and symptoms of trauma, acknowledging the role trauma plays in people's lives, responding in ways that avoids re-traumatization, prioritizing a sense of agency, safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, and empowerment. And lastly, fostering environments that promote healing, resilience, and recovery for those who've experienced trauma.
And we also wanted to give you a little bit another matrix, which is also work in progress, like many things that relate to this topic. But we found this helpful in a way that it kind of informs us what we could do in a particular situation, how we can address, what are the tools, what are the levels of trauma sensitivity in any particular situation. And so you may probably heard, or maybe not, the different terms when it comes to trauma. Trauma aware, trauma informed, trauma sensitive, maybe even trauma responsive. And we would like to give a very brief overview of the differences between these categories. And if you keep just one thing in mind, that could be the level. So they correspond to the level of understanding, integration, and proactive reaction taken in response to trauma.
So being trauma aware means you have a basic understanding of trauma, as what I mentioned before a little bit, what it is, the potential impact on individuals. It also entails acknowledging the potential sensitivities that might activate painful and often involuntary responses trauma survivors may have, and being mindful of this in our intentions. This looks like organizations having training and educating leaders.
And for example, in Sarah's situation, it could have been, and I see it happening now in so many companies or international organizations. Like, it used to be sustainability about the nature. There were no rules, no requirements, no regulations, but yet some individuals, some leaders, they decided to try and start changing things. And so I see this as the next frontier with trauma. And very often it's about individuals. So there would be a mid-level manager or anyone in the situation who is just aware through their own experience, or maybe they read the book, or in their family, in their environment, they just have that awareness and they try to navigate, try to organize the way by the book, but with a touch of trauma awareness. And then it has a very, very different effect. And so with trauma sensitivity, we take trauma awareness a step further by actively incorporating new skills and practices into one's interactions with one another. A trauma-sensitive approach in an organization may involve creating an atmosphere that promotes safety, trust, empowerment to their staff and leaders. A trauma-sensitive working environment, for instance, may provide wellness rooms or counseling. And in Sarah's example, for example, there could be some devoted either meetings or consultations or even just talks with that specific part of the employment population who are affected directly by what's going on.
So taking a step further, the trauma-informed approach aims to integrate this understanding into all aspects of the organization or community. This framework acknowledges the impact of trauma on individuals and tries to avoid re-traumatization. This can look like adjusting working conditions for employees, for example.
Yeah, and we have a beautiful example because that also falls within this topic where, again, some employers, they take that lead and they adjust working conditions for people who are neurodivergent because of their trauma. So that could be an example of a trauma-informed workplace. And being trauma responsive is comprehensive preventive approach along these lines. It combines the principle of being trauma aware, trauma sensitive, and trauma informed, while adding a dynamic element of proactive adaptability. For instance, a trauma responsive organization may regularly seek input from trauma survivors to inform program development, policy changes, and service improvements. For example, after the incident that Sarah described, it would be nice to see some policies that come out of their experience that help the employer and the employees navigate anything that could happen in the future. Mm-hmm. And now I think we're ready to do the case study. And we would like to keep it in absolutely free flow in response to that case study. Any thought, observation, reaction, solution, concern, doubt, anything you may have in response to this situation, even if it's just emotional response, you can throw in an emoji in the chat. Or if you want to talk and it's easier for you than to type it up, we could also accommodate that. And please, Hannah, could you do the honors and read out the case study for us. And thank you for your generous offer of this case study that you use in your work.
I'll read out the case study and then hopefully we'll get the responses. So the scenario that we have painted here is that you are in a meeting where someone suggests a woman on your team be given a big high-profile project based on her excellent performance review. The project requires liaising with the team in Europe and attending online team meetings after local office hours. Our colleague says, I don't think it's a good time for her to take on this huge project. She's just had a baby. I don't think she's up for it.
Yeah, so as Natalia said, if you want to do an emoji on your screen or put it in the chat, or if anyone wants to come off mute and share for a minute or so, we would love that.
I was thinking, why don't we ask her?
Thanks for sharing.
If I can take 2 minutes as well, Sarah, to maybe respond, not how I would after listening to this this session, but if I had been given this scenario previously, how I would have said, you know, this is how one should deal with it. So I would say that if within the meeting, if I were there, what would I do as an individual who's sitting there and listening to this? What would my response be to this, what I would call a microaggression at work, in the sense that it is targeting women in a sense, but you know, with microaggressions, they're small behaviors which are not badly intentioned or don't come from a place of malice as such. They're trying to help her, but they're definitely playing into a stereotype that needs to be corrected at the moment in the meeting. So I would speak up and say that I think we should focus our decision on her qualifications and her performance, and make the offer based on those decisions, on that criteria, and leave whether she accepts it or not to her at the end. And then what I would add additionally is that as a workplace within our HR policies, if there are some supports that we can offer to her as a new mother or as a parent, which could be, you know, just anything like child care or flexible working hours or not clocking in, etc. Whatever supports we can offer, I mentioned that. Or if there are no supports offered by the organizations, what as a team we can offer her. So that would be my way of handling it.
It's great we have in the chats, yeah, not their place to speak up for her, which takes, for me, say more immediately comes up, you know, and also the well-meaning colleague, yeah, could have been a close friend of the woman. And if I may offer my perspective, you know, the learning my re-traumatization, the hook that kind of made me crash land onto my inner landscape, that was my personal trauma. And then I started, like, you know, helping other people. And that was the main, for me, for a while, the point about trauma sensitivity. But when I learned about systemic, that really changed my life. And like in a situation like that, before I would have been, and if I'm sitting with those two colleagues in that meeting, even if I don't know that woman, I know I would have been triggered out of my capacity to call in. That I know for sure. But now that I know this, and I train my observer muscle in a trauma-sensitive way, that gives me the agency to give space to my conditioning that came from thousands of years of the systems of power and oppression in the world. And so, and that kind of gives me, I wouldn't say the patience, but part of the agency, understanding that what took thousands of years to form, I won't be able to will it out of existence. It's not about my willpower or my intention, but if I know how that interferes in any particular situation, I have a chance to navigate it with my best intention in the room as well.
Mm. Thanks, Natalia. We've got some awesome comments in the chat too. Matt said the person may feel pressure to take on the job as well. Do they feel safe to decline or ask for help? Pressure to be at the previous same excellent performance review. Sherwet, I apologize if I butchered your name. Yep, the problem with systemic injustice, oppression, trauma is how subtle and almost unnoticeable. Oh, there's another comment. Where did it go? Someone help me out here. Oh, there it is. Unnoticeable they can be. They come across as normal or well-meaning. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the lens, Celine, also. Yeah, the lens for me, it's what informs my agency. And without that, I'm hit by the triggers directly. And all conditioning, it's, you know, it has existential reason, you know? And it's like, again, and how are we with time? Now,
We got 10 minutes, so.
do we want to wrap up the case and then we move to the questions and answers and comments, because we see so much wisdom in the chat. I would thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. That was exactly our intention.
Yes.
So if you want to go through the slides quickly, and then we can leave 5 minutes at the end because we've had input already. So.
Let's do it.
Maybe we can skip the next one, because I think it's pretty much obvious now for everyone. And just one thing is that for us, trauma-sensitive approach has a huge facilitating effect, something that preserves the intention you have, the energy and the value of your intention, by giving space and taking into account how that resonates for you, for your audience, for your team. And we would like, if you takeaways that are relevant for this topic, that's the next slide. Yeah.
Yep, that's what we're
Is
on.
that?
So, yep.
Yeah.
Oh. So, Natalia, I don't know if you want to jump in here at first, but some of the main takeaways are that, you know, trauma is pervasive, and it's, like Natalia said, important to give space to the voice of the nervous system and that conditioning, and the potential opportunity for systems change through trauma awareness is immeasurable.
And there is always this fine balance, because even at our global event, Culture First, Esther Perel, she spoke about technical solutions. And there is this point solution culture that we want to, the checklist, the regulations, and we go, right? And in this field, I think we kind of see and feel that it's not about that. And there is always going to be that play between the book and playing by the book and something else. That just being compliant and, you know, ticking the boxes is not going to get us there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think Natalia skipped the poll. Great. All right.
Yeah, because we already had very advanced audience. with us today.
Let's go to how to work with us organizationally.
Should I
One more
launch the poll or?
No, we're going to skip the poll. Let's
Oh.
skip to how to work with us organizationally.
Yeah, so Hannah mentioned it. It all started with our Culture Fest webinar on how trauma awareness can help things in the workplace. And then that dimension has been recognized by launching a topical global chapter for all things trauma, and we're very excited about that too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it started with the What's Trauma Got to Do with It webinar. And from that, Natalia and I, as we said now probably 3 times on this webinar, have launched the Global Trauma chapter. Our purpose there is to explore together the benefits of the trauma-informed approach in the workplace for sustainable and regenerative transformation by facilitating employee well-being, DEI initiatives, conscious leadership, employee engagement, and improving corporate cultures in general. Natalia and I also have launched a LinkedIn group called TAPAN, that's Trauma Aware Professionals and Allies Network. This is a group for trauma aware, sensitive, responsive, informed practitioners and allies to land, connect, and build community. If you're interested in joining, the link is in this slide, so you can join there. And just to really wrap my thoughts around this group is for professionals or experts who are doing this work in interdisciplinary ways. Natalia does other trauma-informed circles. I do TRE as a somatic embodiment practice. So we're bringing us all together to maximize our impact.
And we also do consulting work. So for example, if you want to make your offering, you have a question, okay, my webinar on this or that, I want to have the impact that I intend, how trauma awareness can help that too. And it's about not just the words, it's about the structure, it's about so many things. And creating a trauma sensitive space or container takes so many things as well. And so we help educational, social, and corporate places to get there too, and other fellow practitioners to add a bit of magic of trauma awareness. And for the Q&A, we just wanted to put on one slide the giants on whose shoulders we stand on, because I'm sure many of you either read or heard about them. So we just wanted to give our thanks, our vows. But as you can see, there is no name yet. So maybe Sarah, we should be on that list, for advancing systems change through trauma-informed approaches.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this was great. This was a lot, I'm sure. Thank you everyone for hanging in there with us, digesting, taking care of yourselves during this. We would love for you to put a comment or an emoji in the chat or on your screen about how you're feeling. And we're going to open up now for some reflections, comments, and questions.
I'll stop the recording now just so everybody knows.